You are listening to episode 105 of the Overthinker's Guide to Joy. This is the episode where we're going to talk about bucket lists. Let's dive in. This is a podcast for overthinkers, overdoers, and overachievers who are tired of feeling overanxious and just want to feel better. I'm your host, certified life coach, Jackie Dukrenis. Hey friends, and welcome back. I thought today we would talk about bucket lists. When you think of a bucket list, what comes to mind? Skydiving, traveling to exotic locations, swimming with dolphins or maybe sharks. For many, the idea of a bucket list is synonymous with adrenaline-pumping adventures, or at the very least, travel. But at its core, a bucket list isn't just about thrill-seeking. It's a personal inventory of goals that range from the wild and adventurous to the deeply meaningful. But why do people have bucket lists? Well, the notion of a bucket list became more popular after the release of the 2007 movie The Bucket List, where two terminally ill men, played by Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, embark on a journey to complete all the things they want to do before they, quote, kick the bucket. Since then, the idea of crafting a list of dreams and goals has become a symbolic way to live life more fully, no matter what your age. But why do people feel the need to create these lists? Well, it turns out there's several reasons. One is to create a sense of purpose. Life can sometimes feel like it moves too fast. We get caught up in our day-to-day routines, and years, if not decades, have suddenly passed before we know it. A bucket list helps us reconnect with our deepest desires, making sure we don't lose sight of what matters most to us. Another reason, though, is to push boundaries. For some, a bucket list is about pushing the limits of what we think we're capable of, like running a marathon, learning a new language, or hiking the tallest mountain. These goals stretch us beyond our comfort zones. Yet another reason might be to just seek fulfillment. Often people create bucket lists because they feel a void in their lives, like there's a yearning for more, whether that's more meaning or more experiences or just more achievements. And these lists can kind of help fill the space by outlining a roadmap towards that fulfillment. And sometimes it's just about creating memories. Most bucket list items aren't about material things. They're about connections and stories to cherish. These moments often hold more value than any physical possession ever could. And I think that's because as we get older, things or stuff kind of becomes less important, and experiences or creating memories become invaluable. But the really interesting question for me is why some people don't have a bucket list. And so I did a little research on this, and it turns out there's reasons for that too. And one reason is just being present. Some people just prefer to live in the moment without the pressure of having to check off a list. They might find joy in spontaneous experiences and feel that planning adventures diminishes the spontaneity of life. Another reason might be contentment with life. Not everyone feels the need for a bucket list because they already have everything they want. Whether or not they've lived a big, expansive life or a very quiet, simple one. They simply feel they've accomplished what they wanted to do, or they're satisfied with their daily life without the need for grand gestures or bold achievements. And yet another reason might be avoiding pressure. Having a bucket list can feel like an added layer of pressure for some people. And last but not least, they might be focused on small wins. Rather than creating a large list of ambitious goals, some people prefer to focus on smaller, everyday achievements. For them, joy comes from incremental progress rather than completing a grand challenge. I personally have always equated bucket lists with travel. And Maybe it's because people are always like, that's on my bucket list and I want to go there and that's on my bucket list. And as some of you may know, I don't love to travel. Well, I've done my fair share of it throughout my life, and I am grateful to have had the ability and means to do so. It just doesn't call to me the way it does so many others, many of whom are my family members and actually my closest friends. They love to travel, and they have long bucket lists of places they want to go. But because I was one of those people who always associated travel and adventure with bucket lists, I just assumed I didn't really have a bucket list of my own. But then I came to realize that I do have a few items on my bucket list. They just didn't involve adventure or travel. It has always been a personal goal of mine to write a book. While it might not have the same thrill for some as jumping out of an airplane, I can tell you for me, it felt almost as scary, which is probably why it took me so long to finally do it. Now, for those who want to write a book, it can be an act of legacy, creativity, or personal expression. Whether it's a memoir, a novel, or a guidebook, the goal is to leave something behind that speaks to your life's experience and wisdom. And I'm using air quotes for wisdom since I totally recognize that is an entirely subjective word. So I've written a self-help book for managing anxiety, and it shares the same name as this podcast, The Overthinker's Guide to Joy, a handbook for overachievers, people pleasers, and perfectionists. It will be available for purchase next month. But the process of writing a book was truly daunting. The writing wasn't even the hardest part, but the editing and re-editing was a huge commitment and challenge. Whenever I write, whether it's a blog post or a podcast or this book that I've currently been working on, I always think of these quotes. There is no great writing, only great rewriting. And I love this one. Rewriting is like scrubbing the basement floor with a toothbrush. And then there was recording the book for the audio version. I figured that would be a piece of cake after writing the book because I already do a podcast, so I'm used to writing and recording my voice. Silly me. There was nothing easy about reading a book for platforms like Audible, because what I failed to realize is that every word that is written has to be read, which means if you write it, in my case, if I wrote it, it had to be said verbatim. You can't skip words, you can't change words, there's no caveats, you can't riff, not even a little. Because apparently there's some AI algorithm where it reads what you've written and it has to match exactly. So, in addition to being wildly nervous to read my book aloud for the first time, I had a sound engineer who followed along with every word and made sure I didn't skip or add any. So when something sounded a little bit off or wonky, I couldn't just make a change on the fly. I needed to stop the recording, correct the sentence or word in the manuscript, not on the document the book editors sent, because that would mess up their layout, but on another piece of software that I was really not familiar with. And I had to highlight the change and then make the change in a separate Word document for the editor so that it all matches when it goes to print next month. So this made the recording session take twice as long as it should have. And it was twice as exhausting because I was already nervous. I'm the writer of the book. And now I'm suddenly the director of this recording and the producer and the editor and the narrator. I was a mess for days leading up to this and during the entire weekend of the recording. So for almost a whole week, my overthinker, people pleaser, perfectionist brain was in complete overdrive. So in between trying to make sure that I didn't make any mistakes, I also found myself overly anxious and didn't follow my own self-care protocol. I was not getting enough exercise, I wasn't eating my normal well-balanced diet, and subsequently, I wasn't sleeping well, all of which was making me even more anxious than usual. But when I finished the project, I felt like I had birthed a baby, because that's what it's like when you create something and see it through, when you deliver it, if you will. And doing something that scares you a little, but is something you've always wanted to do, is really quite exhilarating, even if there is a little bit of hyperventilation in the process. But this is no different for people who set any kind of goal for personal fulfillment, such as starting a new business, completing a degree later in life, running a charity event, learning a new skill like painting or woodworking, and then showing it to people for the first time, or trying to sell it. These types of goals aren't about seeking thrills or taking physical risks. They're about personal growth, contribution, and making an impact. So whether you have a bucket list full of daring adventures or are more focused on life achievements, there's no right or wrong way to approach it. The beauty of a bucket list is that it's a reflection of you, your hopes, your desires, and your values. So what's on your list? Whether it's seeing the Northern Lights or finally starting that passion project, remember that a bucket list is less about what others think, but how you feel when you know you finally did something you've always dreamt of. So I just encourage you to dream big. It doesn't have to be a big dream to dream big. It just has to be getting in touch with something that you have always wanted. And then the first step is really just taking a first step. It might be signing up for a class to learn something that you need in order to achieve that goal. It might be taking a course online. It might be asking a friend to be your accountability partner. It is never too late to start something that is meaningful to you. All right, friends, that's what I have for you today, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a fantastic week, and bye for now. If you would like to learn more about working with me as a coach, you can connect with me through my website at jackiedegrenis.com. That's JACKIEDECRINIS.com.